The pump had already gone quiet before I noticed the hum. That fluorescent hum had been there the whole time, steady, thin, irritating. It's what I hear when everything is finished, and nothing is supposed to change. I was drying the chest-folding gauze, thinking about the paperwork waiting upstairs. I didn't see movement. I didn't hear a sound. The pump was off. The aspirator was silent. I saw the mark appear anyway. It came up slow, like pressure surfacing through drywall. Not a smear, not pooling. A shape resolving where there hadn't been one when I started. I stopped wiping and let my hands hang there for a second. This wasn't a Twitch story. This was a documentation problem. I'd logged the intake myself earlier that evening. No trauma, no prolonged resuscitation, no vascular compromise, no skin conditions flagged. Hospital chart was clean. Death certificate matched. Nothing in the notes about chest compressions beyond standard attempts under 10 minutes. Refrigeration had been logged correctly. 36 degrees Fahrenheit, steady, no excursions. Time in cold storage within protocol. Embalming had gone textbook. Arterial pressure stable the entire cycle. Drainage complete. No backflow issues. I remember that because this was the kind of case embalmers don't remember. Routine enough to forget before you even zip the bag. The room smelled like formaldehyde and cold water. It always does. But standing there, watching that shape darken, there was something else underneath it. Faint, metallic, like blood that had been sealed too long. The mark sat across the upper chest, just below the clavicles. 5 points. Even spacing. Not fingerprints. No nails. There was no tearing. No bruising consistent with restraint or CPR. No strap marks, no tape residue, no indentation from the table edge. I leaned in and changed my angle under the prep lights. The edges sharpened instead of softening. That's when I knew makeup wouldn't touch it. Wax wouldn't hold either. This wasn't surface skin. It sat between muscle planes deeper than cosmetic correction ever reaches. I pressed lightly with 2 fingers. The tissue didn't rebound the way liver does. It resisted like something had been set there and left. People who work near the dead know how the body behaves after preservation. We rely on that predictability to get through nights like this. My brain did what it always does first. Pressure artifact, chemical redistribution, maybe table contact, maybe uneven drainage. I checked under the body. No object, no ridge, no obstruction. No straps had been used. No compression devices. Nothing that would explain a pattern that clean. I looked at the liver map again. It didn't match the shape. Didn't even come close. I checked my watch. 11:47 in the evening. I stood there and waited because artifacts fade, they soften, they break apart. By 11:53 the mark had darkened. It hadn't spread, it hadn't bled. It had intensified like pressure being reapplied without touch. I clenched my jaw without realizing it. In 8 years of doing this, I told the empty room I've fixed worse. This wasn't something you fix. I reached for my phone and stopped halfway. Internal photos only. No cloud sync, no messaging. Protocol says no personal devices in the prep room. Protocol also assumes the body follows biology. I took 3 photos anyway. Wide shot, close, angle under the prep light. I knew exactly what that could cost me. I also knew that once the bag was closed, the record would be final. This wasn't cosmetic, it was procedural. I adjusted the overhead light and rolled the body slightly to confirm liver. Just enough to shift gravity. The hum stayed the same. The mark didn't move with the body. It didn't smear. It didn't distort. Under side lighting, the pressure pattern was visible higher on the chest now. Same spacing, same depth. Not gone, not reduced, repositioned. I stepped back and felt my breath hitch once, sharp and involuntary. Then I forced it down. I documented the change time in my head. No pen yet. I wanted to see it again first. I rolled the body back flat. The mark stayed where it was. That's when the expectation broke. After embalming, tissue behavior is passive. Gravity diffusion breakdown. This wasn't any of those. I touched the edge again, this time with a gloved thumb. The skin was cool, normal. The resistance was wrong. I pulled my hand back and wiped the glove on a towel even though it was clean. The towel stayed white. There's a point in this job where you stop asking what something is and start asking who will see it. That's not fear. That's survival. I wrapped the chest loosely and stepped away. I needed another set of eyes, even if they told me I was wrong. My supervisor answered on the second ring. I described it clinically. No speculation, no adjectives. Document what you can, he said. Don't turn this into a thing. I stared at the mark while he spoke. It looked back like it had been waiting. For the first time in my career, I bypassed the internal chain. I called local law enforcement and phrased it carefully. I may have missed signs of violence on intake, I said. I need someone to confirm. Saying that out loud tightened something in my chest. If I was wrong, this would be on me. By the time the officers arrived, the room hadn't changed. Same smell, same light, same hum. When they stepped into the prep room, I saw it in their faces immediately. They already regretted coming. They were polite, they were skeptical. They were clearly thinking about the paperwork this would add. They checked the body. They checked the chart. They checked the timestamps. No obvious crime. I pulled up the intake photos on the workstation. The mark wasn't there. Not faint, not hidden. Gone. Under angled lighting, the pressure points looked sharper than before. Defined in a way skin shouldn't hold after preservation. One of them leaned closer and said quietly, "That pattern's clean. No nails, no tearing, even depth across all 5 points." This wasn't assault, but it also wasn't chemistry. They called it a post-mortem artifact, a chemical reaction during preservation. I asked one question evenly, because procedure matters. If it's a reaction, why does it have structure? No one answered. No one told me to delete the photos. No one raised their voice. "Don't circulate this," one of them said. "There's nothing here for us." My supervisor stood behind them, arms crossed, silent. Silence is alignment in places like this. That was the moment I understood something had already been decided. As they were leaving, the younger officer lingered. He still had acne scars along his jawline. He didn't look at me when he spoke. Under flash earlier, he whispered, "It didn't look like that." Then he was gone. I stood alone with the body again, the hum still steady overhead. People who work near the dead expect systems to back us when biology fails. No one believed me. Not because they couldn't, because they weren't allowed to. I looked at the chest one last time before closing the bag. Same spacing, same depth. The mark held, and the paperwork upstairs still waited clean and ready. The fluorescent hum followed me out of the prep bay and into the hall. I had the body bag folded halfway up the chest, unzipped and waiting. The mark was still higher than it had been 6 minutes earlier. I kept my hands busy so my head would stay busy too. What I'm about to tell you cost me my career. Staying quiet almost cost me more. I walked the case packet to the counter and laid it flat. One glance at the release tag, one glance at the cooler log. Everything looked clean on paper, which made it worse. I called my supervisor again before I did anything else. I kept my voice level and used the same words as always. "Come look at the chest," I said before I closed the bag. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't ask what I meant by before. He said, "Document what you can like." It was a reflex. Then he said the part he always says when things get awkward. "Don't turn this into a thing." That was the moment I realized I had already turned it into a thing. I had taken photos with my phone in the prep room. My jaw clenched once as I stared at my own lock screen. People who work near the dead learn how to keep problems inside the building. We fix what can be fixed and bury the rest in routine. I should have stopped there and finished the packet. I should have done cosmetics and sealed the zipper. I didn't. I called the police, and I lied just enough to get them to show up. I may have missed signs of violence on intake, I told dispatch. I need someone to confirm it wasn't a homicide. The words felt heavy as soon as they left my mouth. If this was nothing, I'd look incompetent and reckless. If it was something, staying quiet would make me complicit. Dispatch asked for an address and a callback number. They asked if the coroner had been notified already. I said the case was certified hospital death, no hold order. They gave me a call number and told me to wait. I wrote the number on a glove cuff with a Sharpie. Then I washed it off immediately, like that erased the decision. I went back into the prep bay and pulled the bag down again. I wanted the officers to see the body as it was. I also wanted to see if I was imagining the shift. The mark held its 5 pressure points, even spacing, clean edges under side lighting. The hum stayed steady over my head. I checked the chart again for anything I'd missed. No CPR beyond brief attempts documented as under 10 minutes. No bruising noted on intake. No skin abnormalities listed. I pulled the intake photos up on the workstation and zoomed in. The chest in those photos was blank, normal, unremarkable. The contrast between the images made my throat go dry. I set a UV prep light on the counter and left it off. I didn't want to add variables before they arrived. Then I turned it on anyway and aimed it at the chest. The mark appeared sharper under that light, not softer. That wasn't how chemical artifacts behave. That was how pressure patterns behave when they are real. I shut the UV light off and forced my hands still. A door opened down the hall. Footsteps came in pairs, then stopped. When police stepped into the prep room, I saw it immediately. They already regretted coming. Warm uniforms in a cold room looked out of place. Their faces stayed polite, but their eyes were already tired. The fluorescent hum filled the space between every question. One officer asked for my name and my role. I gave him my license number without being prompted. That's what you do when you want to look clean. They asked to see the body, then the chart, then the timestamps. They looked for obvious trauma like they always do. They didn't find any because there wasn't any to find. I showed them the mark without calling it anything. I let them stand over the table and form their own opinion. Observation before interpretation, like we're trained. They asked why I thought it was violence. I said, because it wasn't there when I started and stopped. I didn't mention the photos yet. They asked about refrigeration, so I pulled the cooler log. 36 degrees Fahrenheit, continuous, no excursions. They nodded like that meant the conversation could end. Then I pulled up the intake photos on the workstation. Hospital time-stamped facility watermark in the corner. I zoomed the chest and let them stare. The mark wasn't present in any intake image. Not faint, not partial, not hidden by glare. It was absent in a way that felt deliberate. I clicked to the next photo. Same chest, same lighting, same blank skin. Then I turned the monitor toward the table again. I didn't touch the body. I turned on the angled prep light and stepped back. The pressure points tightened into focus, like a map being traced. One officer leaned closer and said it quietly. That pressure pattern is clean. He pointed without touching. No nail marks, no tearing, no bruising consistent with restraint. Even depth across all 5 points like a tool had measured them. That line made my breath hitch once quick and ugly. I swallowed it down and kept my hands at my sides. I didn't want anyone to see my relief, because relief would mean it was real. And if it was real, it meant it happened under my watch. That's where fear competes with exposure. They asked if I'd tried to cover it with wax. I said no because it wasn't surface. I used the simplest words I could manage. It sits deeper than cosmetics, I said. Between planes. Makeup won't touch it. That got their attention for about 3 seconds. Then the older officer did what older officers do. He simplified the problem until it fit a box. Post-mortem artifact, he said, like he was labeling a file. Chemical reaction during preservation. He said it without looking up. I asked one question too calm for the room. If it's a reaction, why does it have structure? The fluorescent hum answered for him. No one responded. No one argued. They just looked at each other, then at my supervisor. My supervisor had stepped in without me hearing him. He stood behind them with his arms crossed. He didn't ask what they saw. Silence becomes agreement in places like this. I felt the emotional void open under my feet. No one believes us when we say the rules didn't work. One officer asked if I had taken any photos myself. I hesitated for a fraction too long. That was my mistake. I said yes and kept it at that. I didn't hand them my phone. I didn't offer to text anything. He didn't demand it. He didn't threaten me. He just said, "Don't circulate this." Then he said, "There's nothing here for us." Not "we don't believe you," not "you're wrong," just "not for us." That was containment, not denial. It was a decision to keep the problem procedural. It was also a warning dressed as advice. They asked for the case number in our system. I gave it to them, and they wrote it down. They gave me their incident number in return. I watched the pen move on their notepad. That incident number made everything real in a new way. It meant this had entered a system that would outlive me. The older officer said they would note no evidence of foul play. He said it like he was doing me a favor. That sentence tightened something behind my eyes. This was my frustration moment, and it came out clean. It doesn't need to be foul play to be wrong, I said. My supervisor didn't flinch. The officers stepped away from the table. They looked around the room like it was suddenly smaller. The hum stayed steady and different. They reminded me not to discuss it with the family. They reminded me to follow normal procedures. They said it like procedure was a force field. As they turned to leave, the younger officer hung back. He had acne scars along his jaw and a fresh shave line. He didn't look comfortable in his own uniform yet. He lowered his voice until it barely carried. Under flash earlier, he whispered, "It didn't look like that." Then he walked out before I could ask what he meant. I stood there alone again in the same cold light. The body was still on the table bag, still open. The incident number sat on my glove cuff like a stain. I looked at the supervisor waiting for instructions. He didn't speak. He just nodded once toward the packet upstairs. That's when I understood what the next step would be. Not an investigation, not a hold order, a clean report, a sealed zipper, and silence. The fluorescent hum followed me back to the desk. I opened the case packet and found the signature line. The pen felt heavier than it had 10 minutes earlier. And the mark was still there, waiting to be ignored. The fluorescent hum was still in my ears when I opened the case packet again. I should have been sealing the zipper and finishing cosmetics. Instead, I was standing at the admin terminal, glove cuffs rolled down. The file I found wasn't hidden. It was miscategorized. On purpose, The case had already been flagged for immediate release. I saw it on the transport board in plain black text, ready for transfer with a timestamp that felt too early. That was the first contradiction that night that didn't involve skin. It was paperwork moving faster than bodies ever move. And that only happens when someone wants an outcome. I logged into our internal system with my badge and a 4-digit PIN. The screen glowed blue-white against stainless steel and gray walls. The hum from the lights filled every pause between my clicks. I pulled up the decedent record and opened the activity history. Every case has one, even if no one ever reads it. It shows who touched the file and when and what changed. The last edit time had shifted by a few minutes. That alone could be normal in a busy building. Then I saw the second line, and my stomach dropped. The intake image metadata had been overwritten, not deleted. Overwritten. That is a very specific kind of change. It means someone didn't want the photos gone. They wanted them replaced with something that looked official. I opened the image viewer and checked the file properties. Camera source changed. Device ID blanked out. The photo looked similar, but it wasn't the same photo. The lighting angle was wrong by a few degrees. The chest looked cleaner than I remembered. I clicked back and forth until my eyes burned. The mark was still there on the body in the prep room. On the screen, it was faint, almost polite. That was the first time I understood the real danger. The anomaly wasn't the mark itself anymore. The anomaly was the record. I checked the chain of custody field and found it untouched. That field never changes unless someone wants court later. This wasn't legal preparation. This was administrative smoothing. I went into the cooler log tab and verified the temperature trace. 36 degrees Fahrenheit steady lines, no missing minutes. Then I checked the user stamp for the log export. Different initials than the tech who usually runs nights. That tech was off this week. I knew because I had covered his shift. I sat down and forced my hands still on the keyboard. The fluorescent hum sounded louder when I stopped moving. I didn't like how quiet my own breathing had gotten. People who work near the dead learn to read systems like weather. A storm doesn't need lightning to tell you it's coming. I printed the activity log and watched the printer spit it out. The page came warm into my gloved hand. Warm paper in a cold room always feels wrong. The log showed the same record edited twice in 10 minutes. One edit replaced images. The other edit changed the release flag to immediate. That wasn't the work of a tired clerk. That was 2 decisions made on purpose, and both decisions reduced visibility. I tried to tell myself it was a software sync issue. I even opened the system status page to check for outages. No outage. No maintenance. I hesitated with my cursor over the Audit Export button. Exporting creates a trace, and traces create conversations. My thumb hovered over the mouse, and I waited anyway. Then I clicked it. A small window asked for a reason. I typed quality assurance because it was the closest safe lie. The export created a file with a name longer than it needed. Case number, date time, and a random string. Systems love randomness when humans need clarity. I saved it to a thumb drive from the locked drawer. We call it the red stick because it's used for holds. That's an insider habit, not a rule. I walked back to the prep room and looked at the body again. The mark still held its 5 points, even spacing, even depth. It looked clinical, like measurement rather than injury. That was the shared pain point in my work. After preservation, tissue behavior is supposed to stay predictable. The police had given me an incident number. My supervisor had given me silence. Neither one meant protection. I went to the file cabinet and pulled archived materials. Old SOP binders, training memos, policy updates nobody reads. Most places keep them for inspections, not for truth. I checked the index for anything related to pressure artifacts. Nothing. I checked chemical reactions. Nothing. Then I tried something uglier. I searched for the word manifestation because it felt like a euphemism. The binder didn't have it. The digital archive did. It was in a folder that didn't match its contents. Not clinical anomalies, not incident review. It was under equipment calibration, miscategorized, on purpose. The document opened as a scanned PDF with a faded header. Pressure manifestation post-preservation, created in 1985. There was one line near the top that didn't belong anywhere. Source unknown, organic origin. Not paranormal, not spiritual, biological, unclassified. I scrolled down and found 4 prior cases summarized. 4 different states, 4 different facilities, all within 30 minutes after embalming completion. Each summary was short, cold, and procedural. No medical explanation provided. No legal escalation initiated. The language changed every time it appeared. Artifact in one, pressure anomaly in another, post-event imprint in a third. Different labels, same pattern. That's how you avoid pattern detection in a system. You change the noun until no one can search it. I felt my jaw tighten again, but I didn't let it show. If this was documented since 1985, it wasn't rare. It was managed. No one believes us when we say the rules didn't hold. They believe forms. They believe fields. They believe checkboxes. I looked at the author field on the PDF and saw it was blank. No name, no department. Just a revision trail with dates spanning decades. That's when the third contradiction hit. If it's real enough to revise, it's real enough to acknowledge. And they still kept it out of relevance. I read the recommended response section twice. It wasn't treatment. It wasn't investigation. It was containment. Minimize exposure. Discourage external documentation. Expedite release when feasible. That language wasn't written for embalmers. It was written for administrators. It was written for risk. My frustration moment came out as one sentence, flat and ugly. So the body isn't the problem, I said the record is. The fluorescent hum kept going like nothing happened. I sat there with the PDF open and the printer idle. My hands felt too clean for what I'd just learned. The system didn't deny the mark. The system classified it out of relevance. That's a different kind of truth. The police weren't dismissing me. They weren't allowed to pursue it. They gave me an incident number and a way out. My supervisor didn't threaten me. He didn't have to. He let procedure do the work. The next morning, I got reassigned without a meeting. No write-up, no discipline, just a schedule change in the HR portal. Prep room shifts removed, administrative tasks added, transfer paperwork inventory, cooler audits. It was framed as coverage. It felt like exile. No one asked what I saw. I stopped checking the prep room camera feeds. I stopped opening activity logs for other cases. I did my job and stayed inside my lane. Weeks passed and the incident number stayed in my wallet. A thin slip of paper behind my license card. I didn't show it to anyone. Then 3 weeks later, I noticed my wrist under the bathroom light. 5 faint pressure points, evenly spaced, no pain. The skin wasn't broken. It wasn't swollen. It looked like a bruise that didn't commit to being a bruise. It took too long to fade, longer than anything that small should. I rubbed it without thinking, thumb circling the same spots. Then I pulled my sleeve down and held it there. Like fabric could fix a record. I didn't report it. I didn't photograph it. I finally understood the protocol. Police said it was chemistry. My supervisor said it was pressure. So let me ask you this, if it's just a reaction. Why did it know where the cameras weren't, and if that body was truly dead? Why did it leave a mark on the only person who tried to document it? If you work anywhere near death, a hospital, a morgue, an ambulance, a funeral home, you already know how many things never make it into the report. If this story made you uncomfortable, that's probably because it wasn't meant to be comforting. If you've ever seen something you were told to ignore, something that didn't break the rules, but didn't follow them either, leave a comment. Not with details. Just say whether you stayed quiet or you spoke up. If you want to hear more stories like this, the ones that don't get investigated, the ones that don't get explained, subscribe. I don't post often. But when I do, it's because something didn't sit right. And if you think someone else might recognize this feeling, share it with them. Some people don't need proof. They just need to know they're not the only one. People keep asking if this was just chemistry or just pressure. So I'll ask you instead, if a system quietly adjusts the record instead of correcting the event, does that make the event less real?